What is up, Ravens flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. I'm Glenn Martin here with my co-host James Haskell, the Rascal. And in this episode, with camp right around the corner, we're going to discuss, we're going to do a few of these, discussing all the different camp battles. But in this show specifically, we're going to discuss the wide receiver camp battle. This is one of the most intriguing battles going into camp this year, which is kind of funny because when you consider the Ravens' history, not typically deep in the wide receiver room, but certainly this year they made a commitment to add talent to the room, and it's made for an interesting camp battle. So we're going to discuss what the Ravens have done in the past couple years to give us a little bit of a blueprint on what they're going to do this year. So, Jimbo, where are we getting started with this one?
Yeah, what I think it will do is let's name all the receivers that we have like going in, and then I want to provide some historical context so we can know moving forward most likely what the Ravens will do. Some other things we're going to do as well is talk about the X, right? Because I think part of this position battle series that we're kind of doing in preparation for camp is really focused around who's going to be our number one, what positions will these guys end up playing, what will the wide receiver room look like as far as who's getting the percentages of the passes, who's getting the attention, where are they playing, all those things. Because I think there's going to be quite a position battle going down. I think that there's a lot of alphas in that room now. Look, Hollywood Brown was a first-round pick. He believes in himself. I don't think he wants to be relegated to the slot. I think he wants to say, look, I want to stay on the outside. I'm a true number one. I'm better than DK Metcalf and all these other guys that you guys drafted me in front of. When I'm healthy, I can show it. And Sammy's an X. He'll play his role, but he knows what he is when he's healthy. And Rashad Bateman isn't coming in giving anybody any breaks. Right, so it's going to be interesting. So I think the best place for us to start. Let's name the guys. So do you have the guys in front of you that we currently have as far as all of them that are going into camp?
Yep, I got them all. I got Marquis Brown, Sammy Watkins, Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay, Miles Boykin, Tylenol Wallace, James Prochet, Jalen Moore, Deion Kane, Benjamin Victor, and Devin Gray. So it's a long list. Is
that 9? Did I count that right?
3, 6, 9, 11, Jimbo.
Oh, man, I was 2 off.
11. So we got 11 guys, and let's get into how many they typically keep. Let's go back to I'll go back 2 years ago to 2019, and woof, this is a list, Jimbo. Oof. So we got Marquis.
A lot of firepower?
Yeah, it's scaring some defensive coordinators now just hearing me read the list, I'm sure. So in 2019, they kept 6 receivers in the final cut down. They kept Marquis Brown, Miles Boykin, Chris Moore, Willie Snead, Jaleel Scott, and Seth Roberts.
Do you think, let me ask you this real quick before we get into this list. Do you think the Hollywood Brown came in, he hobbled, right? Knowing like so let me ask you 2 questions. How long do you think it took him to realize he's already the best in the room? And then 2, do you think he came in and was like, dude, I made it. These guys are like, if this is the NFL, I made it, right?
Oh, there's no doubt. And I think that the Ravens were probably pretty upfront, or at least as upfront as they could be, by saying, we don't need you to practice. We need you to do what you have to do to be out there week 1 because we're going to be in trouble if you're not. And thank goodness he was. And the chemistry was instant between him and Lamar because, that's a list, man. I mean, that's a tough one. So they kept 6 in 2019, and then in 2020, It didn't get a whole ton better, but still kept 6 guys. They kept Willie Snead, Chris Moore, Marquis Brown, Miles Boykin, Devin Duvernay, and James Prochet. So you can see, though, that they're starting to build some young talent there with really
you got to load the hopper, right? If you want to get any results, you got to keep loading the hopper.
That's right. Really, Willie Snead, the only vet on the list, and unless you consider Chris Moore a vet, I guess at that point in his career he was by tenure standards, but not by gameplay and not by receptions or snaps offensively, that's for sure. But so they kept 6. So I guess we can guess that they're going to either keep 6, most likely keep 6, but we could stretch it maybe as far as 7, certainly no further than that. And that's about as far as we'll be able to go.
So guys,
there.
Remember that when you comment us your list, but please remember that we can't keep all of them. Like
Right.
11 will not be on the roster. 9 will not be on the roster. Just like Glenn explained, it is an absolute stretch to say 7. Like it's feasible, but it is certainly a stretch to say that we will have 7. So keep that in mind when you send us our list, or if you decide to comment on our list, right?
Yeah.
So like if you send us your list or talk about ours, just remember we might have left some guys you like off the list, but we like them too. But sometimes just a numbers game.
That's right. Yep, absolutely. So I think we should do them in order then. I think we should start with who we believe right now is the number 1. Now, of course, the season as it plays out, things can change. But as it stands heading into camp, who we view as the number 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So, Jimbo, if you had to put your money on who's the number 1 receiver heading into camp right now, who you got?
Man, we might already disagree. And I think a lot of people are going to tear me up about this, but that's okay. But I think right now, like, so when I think of number 1, my ex, right? Who's my guy on the outside? That's my alpha, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna get upset at this one. I'm putting Sammy Watkins right there.
Okay.
I am because I think he's healthy. I think he's been doing things in camp, and I think he's got the body that they want on the outside. Like physically, he's the type of player that they want on the outside.
Okay.
I think it's Sammy.
Wow.
I know it sounds crazy, but and I don't think it'll stay that way. But I think that's how it starts.
Yeah. I think. I mean, I tend to agree with you, Jimbo, and it's because of the fact that he's the vet in the room. That it's at least unless if we're going to believe what's coming out of camp so far, some of the OTAs, their chemistry has been instant between Lamar
and Greg. Trust him.
Absolutely. He knows that. So it's, even though he's new to the team, he's not new to the system. He's played in this system before. There's nothing going to be surprising about it. I'm sure there's some wrinkles here and there, but this guy's been around. He understands, concepts and offenses, and I think he'll be just fine sliding right in. But I love the chemistry with Lamar Jackson, because I think on every team that's important, for a quarterback to have the chemistry with the wideout. But this team specifically, it seems like if Lamar doesn't trust you, if Lamar doesn't, have that chemistry with you, then you're not going to get a ton of targets. So I like the fact that I'm hearing that they're hooking up for those deep balls, and they're doing so on a consistent basis, at least thus far. So I tend to agree with you, Jimbo. I'm going to pencil Sammy in as well.
I wonder if we're going to get hammered for this one.
Well, this doesn't necessarily mean who we think is going to have the best year out of all of them.
That's true. Right.
It's just who we think is going to be, lined up where they are, because – and I'm going to get into that right now, because if I start talking about number 2, it's a guarantee. It's Marquis Brown. And I'll say this, I think Marquis has the best season of them all. And a lot of that is because of the fact that he has such a close relationship with Lamar. I that's such a big thing to me, because when Lamar is, scrambling, when Lamar is in need of a big play, he's looking for his best buddy. I mean, that's his best friend, certainly on this team, and maybe his best friend, in his everyday life. So this is a guy who they carpool to the games together. They're always seen on social media hanging out together. They train together. I mean, it's just too much in favor of him getting those targets. And, I played at a very, very, very low level of football. And, I was very good friends with the quarterback. So I got a ton of targets because of that friendship. So, and also I think him moving and transitioning more to the inside, that benefits him well, as with Lamar Jackson's favorite area to throw in is the middle of the field. And I think he's going to be there a lot.
Do you think that he wants to relinquish the possibility of being a true outside and move more to the inside? Like, everyone's talking about it, and I get what you're saying, that like it could be mutually beneficial for him and the team from a production standpoint. But do you ever think he goes, man, well, this might be good for me. I don't know if it's going to be the best for my pocketbook, like I'm a 1950s lady. But you see what I'm saying though? Like, because a true outside guy is going to get, when DK's contract is coming up and his contract is coming up, and they start talking about who's playing outside, who's playing inside, this, that, and the other. Like, the outside guy generally is going to get more money. So do you think that ever comes into consideration when he thinks, dang, they're trying to bump me to the inside, I need to show out because I'm an outside guy?
I think that comes down to a couple things. Is how big is his ego, which he doesn't strike me as a guy that has a huge ego. And everything we've heard from him seems like a realistic guy. And then, also, are you physically able to go out there and do it? I think there's some self-awareness. So it's self-awareness and ego. Like, does he understand that, hey, I'm going to go up against some pretty physically imposing corners on the outside, guys that are bigger than me, faster. I mean, maybe not faster, but bigger and stronger than me for sure. And they can use that, to my disadvantage. So I think that he'll just understand that there's an advantage moving inside. But I don't think that there's, reason to believe that Marquis will never be seen on the outside. I think there's still going to be plenty of opportunity for him to work on the outside. They're going to be moving these guys around. I mean, and also it's not a perfect, there's going to be injuries that are going to strike this unit at some point in the season. Not sure who it's going to be, but Sammy's got a history. So certainly you can look to him, and he might find his way on the outside out of necessity. So I still think Marquis is going to have a fantastic year, but yes, I do believe naturally he's better suited for the inside, and we'll see more of that this year. So who do you got at number 3? Because this is an interesting one. Because I think everyone would have put Marquis and Sammy at 1 and 2, whichever order, and then it gets interesting after him.
Yeah, so for me, it doesn't get too interesting. I think it's pretty simple. I think it's Rashad Bateman. Look, I think by the end of the year, I said it in our last live show, he's our number 1. I think Rashad is the man in the room, and I think he's going to show that certainly. I think he'll move up quickly, but I think as the season starts, he'll be a number 3.
Okay.
What other options do you see there? Are you talking about like a Duvernay or?
Yeah, I mean, guys that have been around. Yeah, Miles Boykin, Devin Duvernay. I mean, guys that have at least been in the system and know it a little bit better. I mean, I think that, like, if you were Devin Duvernay, wouldn't you be saying, "Hey, man, I've been here. I mean, I've earned my opportunity. Every time you've asked me to do something, I've done it at a high level." At least if I was Devin Duvernay, I wouldn't just be relinquishing that spot to Rashad Bateman. Now, he could play, Bateman could play his way into that spot, but, I think I would have an argument if I was Devin Duvernay for that spot. But I agree with you, Jimbo. I think Rashad Bateman is the number 3. And I think what's really useful about him is that in college, he showed he can be super effective inside or outside. It doesn't matter for him. And also, what I loved about him is his ability to get himself open after the play breaks down. And Lamar Jackson does a fantastic job buying time. And Rashad Bateman just has a knack for coming back to the quarterback and making plays for his quarterback that are off schedule. I think that's a big thing that gets him on the field and keeps him on the field, certainly in those high leverage situations, because, when it's a big time third down, Lamar Jackson's going to do everything he can to keep his feet under him and keep his eyes down the field. Certainly this year, I think more than others. And Bateman could be a good big time recipient of a lot of those targets.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure. I'm really interested to see how that breaks down. That's a great point you bring up about Duvernay, because I think all these young guys are in a position to be successful, and I include Hollywood in that because none of them have an overwhelming amount of pressure, or like, it's not where we're extremely reliant on just one coming into the season, and they're really young guys. And so I think that gives them an opportunity to all flourish, but it's really going to be interesting to see how, because there's only one football. So it's interesting to see how it will break down, because a guy like Devin Duvernay on another team could get 80 targets easy, right?
Yeah.
But he's certainly not going to in this offense. So it's going to be really interesting to see how that pans out. But your number 4, talk about interesting, I think it gets even more interesting here. I'll tell you my number 4 here is Devin Duvernay. And I think that's a safe. He's safe 4. I mean, I think that's his floor, and he could end up being higher in the depth chart than number 4. But Devin Duvernay is my number 4. What about you?
I agree with you. I think he just did so much with little last year. I mean, very little opportunity, and really capitalized on all those opportunities. I mean, he's a guaranteed lock, in my opinion, because of his return ability. He was one of, if not the best return guys once he took over that role after, for James Prochet. And I think that he's only going to expand that role this year and really get creative in the return game, especially in the kick return game, and become an impact player in that department. And we haven't seen an impact player in the return game since our boy Jacoby Jones left. And we know the impact he made, certainly during that Super Bowl run. A lot of people argue that he should have been MVP of that Super Bowl, and I tend to agree with them, honestly. So I think Devin Duvernay is a huge weapon. I love his toughness. I love his after-catch ability. I love his versatility. I mean, this is a guy that they showed while not giving him a ton of opportunity, those opportunities came in a lot of different ways. So they certainly understand his versatility, and I think that kind of shows out even more this upcoming season. I'm real excited to see what he can do. I hope that all the crowded bodies in this room don't wash him out and make it, tough to get him those opportunities, because I mean, what did he? I don't remember a single play where he was where I was like, man, I wish he would have, done this and he could have gotten a couple more. No, he got the most out of every single play he was on the field.
He's the Gus Edwards of the wide receiver room.
Yeah, it's a good point. Yeah.
I mean, limited opportunities, making the most of them. Yeah, certainly. I agree with you. It's going to be so interesting to see how they use him. I hope they get creative with him, because I think that I might be going out on a limb here, but this is my opinion. I think in the wide receiver room, he's the most dangerous guy with the football.
Like after the catch? Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. With the football in his hands. And I think part of that is because we've talked about this before. He's got a little Debo Samuel in him, because he's got that running back background. He's unique. He's different than the other guys. Of course, you and I were both excited about Hollywood Brown and his after the catch ability. He hasn't quite shown that yet. And I think it's a lot different than Devin Duvernay's style, and when it comes to physicality. So I want him to get the football. I want him to get the football a lot, because like you said, he's done is done good things with it in his hands. But certainly, how much do you not want the guys in front of him to get the football? So it's really going to be interesting to see how they use him. They get creative with him. But certainly all those guys are locks. And then I think the number 5 guy, I mean, a lot of people are intrigued about him. We had a guy, from Oklahoma talk about him on the show. And I'm assuming you have Tylenol Wallace as number 5, right? And I do too. All these guys are locks. We're already at 5. And look, some people think that he's better than Rashad Bateman.
Yeah.
We've seen in our comments. Some people, people are really high on Wallace. How are you feeling about him?
Yeah, I agree. I super high on him. I love the fit because he's an outside guy. This was the most productive outside, or either the most or the second most productive outside over a 3-year period.
And most
Oklahoma
contested
State.
Catches last year, right? Wasn't that what it was?
Yeah, he had the highest contested catch rate. He had
That's what it was,
the
right.
lowest drop rate at 1.1% drop rate. Are you kidding me? I mean, the guy was the model of consistency, 3 consecutive years of showing nothing but consistency and production. He's a dog when the ball is in the air. He can win those 50-50 balls. I mean, it's funny, this is another guy that's classic that plays way bigger than his actual numbers show. I mean, he just has a knack for going and getting the ball, despite the fact that he's not the most imposing person physically. So I love the fact that they brought in a guy who's a true outside. Now, some people say that, and they predicted that he might even be better inside. But, I mean, when you have that type of track record as an outside receiver, I'm not sure why you would consider moving in, especially when the Ravens have plenty of guys that can go inside and be successful. I think he's going to be a huge boost to the team. I think similar to what Duvernay was last year for us, but hopefully a little bit more involvement on offense, because I don't think we're going to see much of him unless there's an injury to Duvernay in the return game like we did, with Devin.
Yeah.
But I'm real excited to see him, because, I mean, man, this guy he was a big play threat waiting to happen. He was a 50-50 ball machine, and really it's just a crowded room. So I hope he gets enough targets to show some of what he's got, because I really think he's super talented, but he might be a year away from being able to unveil that to the fans. Yeah,
it's going to be really, like you said, it's going to be really interesting to see how they deploy him in the offense, integrate him in. The one thing that comes to my mind here is I think the analytics team for the Baltimore Ravens is really going to shine or not this year, in that Eric DeCosta asked them to put together the top 10 receivers based on their statistical analysis. And both of these guys were in the top 10, Rashad Bateman and Tylen Wallace. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out, right? Because a lot of PFF didn't have, I don't think they had Tylen Wallace graded as high as we took him, even though we took him late. There's a lot of discrepancy there between the Ravens and other, analytical organizations. So it's going to be really interesting to see. But let's get to number 6, Glenn, because this is where it gets sticky. So are you saying we only have 6, or is this your last spot in the wide receiver room, or do you have 2 more?
Well, if you go off their history, this is the last spot. Now, I will say this, there is an opportunity to go light elsewhere. I mean, most notably the quarterback room. A lot are predicting that they'll just go with 2 rather than 3 this year so they can go heavy elsewhere. But there's a lot of other opportunities on the roster where they could go heavy. I mean, corner, they only kept, I think, 5 last year. That would mean they're going to be cutting Anthony Averett. They're going to be cutting. I mean, there's guys that they have to keep because of recent draft pick, but there's also some really quality players they might have to cut. So I'm not so sure they're going to go heavy in a receiver room when, let's be honest, I mean, I think that the receiver room in Baltimore is less valuable as far as, roster spots, going heavy than anywhere else. I mean, why would you go heavy in a position
the team that
where
throws the least?
Exactly. So I think that there's a good opportunity they go heavy at safety or at corner.
You could go heavy at tight end, in that even if you consider Ben Mason that third guy, still a roster spot wherever you want to plug him in, where there's a second fullback or a third tight end, that's still a spot where it's an extra body, like you're saying. So
no doubt.
There's
or offensive line. I mean, you start looking at this offensive line, and they're going to have to cut a recent pick, a guy that probably played as soon as as recently as last year. So it's going to get interesting. So I'm going to say 6. And for that 6th spot, we got 6 guys competing for it, Jimbo. We got Miles Boykin, James Prochet, Deion Kane, Benjamin Victor, Jalen Moore, and Devin Gray. I mean, that's 6 guys competing for just one spot. So let's get into it, Jimbo. What's your thought process when you start thinking about who's going to get that spot?
So there's a lot of things to go through in your mind, right? So Boykin's been with the team, if I'm not mistaken, of those guys, he's been with the team the longest. He's probably the best in the wide receiver room at one thing. He's probably the best blocker as it stands today, which is great, and that's something in his favor. But certainly, even in this offense, is still a footnote in comparison to his actual job description. But he is the best in the room at something, so he has that to stand on. Yep. And he's got the longest tenure, and he's got the most, physically, he's probably the most gifted of the rest.
Yeah.
But Deion Kane and Benjamin Victor, one of the two is 6'2". I think it's Deion Kane. And he's got some physical gifts to him as well. So that does kind of wash that out. So I think of a couple things. One, who's going to give me the most value, not just in the wide receiver room, because none of these guys are complete guys, but in special teams. So even unless Deion Kane really lights it up, and I mean really lights it up, I think it really comes down to Boykin, and it comes down to violent sneeze attack.
Yeah, excuse me.
And it comes down to Boykin or Prochet, because Boykin is good in special teams, and in a different way, Prochet is as well, as far as being he showed last year he was a good a trusted punt returner. So I think, to me, it really comes down to those two, and me, because of the redundancy and Devin Duvernay just being better than James Prochet at punt returns and obviously kick returns, I think it ends up being Miles Boykin, and then they try and squeeze Prochet onto the practice squad.
Wow. So no Deion Kane.
I think it's unfortunate, but he's got to really have to break out, and I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. The way I look at it is very similar. I think of like, how many boxes can you check?
Right.
And I think they like the upside that Boykin brings. And really, I think a lot of it comes down to the opinions of the new wide receiver coaches. I think that they're going to ask Keith Williams. They're going to ask T. Martin. What did you see out of these guys? Who do you look at as the guy that we should
imagine being a first-year coach and you're asked to put a kid's career on judge a kid's career. I mean, you could be ending it.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, especially when you talk about those futures with Ben Victor and Deion Kane. These guys have already had a couple opportunities here. So, yeah, this could be their last. And of course, Jalen Moore and Devin Gray were always long shots to make the team. I think that, their journey ends here, at least with the Ravens. And hopefully they can catch on somewhere else. But I agree with you. It's between Prochet and Boykin, in my opinion. I'm intrigued by Prochet because what if Devin Duvernay were to get hurt? That's the big what if to me.
Right.
And if you lose Devin Duvernay, who's your kick and punt returner? And especially if you lose Devin Duvernay in game, it's not that bad if you lose him in practice or at the end of the game, and you don't need another return guy. But if you're in need of a return guy, I know there's guys that can go back and catch the ball. I heard Rashad Bateman talk about how, he's practiced returning or, catching punts and stuff throughout his career. Never done it, though, under the lights.
Yeah, exactly.
With guys screaming at you. There's just a different type of, pressure there. And
one job I would not envy ever.
No. I mean, imagine running full speed at guys that are also running full speed right back at you.
Are you standing still and knowing there's humans running at you as fast as they physically can? No, thank you.
And you can't take your eyes off the ball to take a peek and see how close they are. That ball's going to be muffed. So that's the only thing that is, I think, going to be like, do they think they can get Prochet through to the practice squad? Now, I believe they could, because of the fact that why are you going to sign a guy who hasn't shown a lot in the offensive game and only really shown that he can give you, some production in the return game? Why would another team grab him and sign him to their active 53? I think that would be surprising. But if there's a rash of if they have a return guy go down, they know that even if you don't know our system, you can go out there and catch a punt. So I can see why another team would grab him if the situation called for it. But I think that they're going to keep riding the fact that Boykin has the most upside. He has the most physical abilities. He was a late bloomer back at Notre Dame in college, and maybe he's a late bloomer here in Baltimore. I think the coaches, if they can round out his route running ability and really just try and emphasize playing to your size. I mean, that's the thing that always bugs us, is that he doesn't play to his size. He plays smaller than he is, where we just got done raving about how Tylan Wallace plays so much bigger than he is and how that adds value. I think the fact that Boykin hasn't shown that yet, decreases his value in a big way. But if he can snap out of it and somehow at least play up to his actual size, he could be a big boost. We talked about him a while being that added extra red zone threat because of his size and length. We just haven't seen him put it together, but I think they give him one last chance to do so, and he ends up being our final and sixth receiver. And they try and see what they do. Look, I would not be shocked if one or two of these guys find themselves on the IR to stash them away and keep them on the team as a future in a way. But yeah, I think so I think that's the final group. I think we have Sammy, Marquis, Rashad Bateman, Devin Duvernay, Tylan Wallace, and Miles Boykin ultimately, with one of these guys on the IR and at least one or two on the practice squad.
Yeah, let us know what your guys' thoughts are. Glenn, I as I mentioned before, I agree with you as well. Those are our six. Give us your thoughts. Leave all your comments below. Remember that use the historical data to if you're going to put your list together, don't put a list of 9.
Right.
Because it's not going to happen. But give us your thoughts. Comment on our list. Give us all your thoughts below, and we'll talk to you guys soon.